to the Fantasy Source Football Podcast. My name is David A. Arnott, sitting with Brad Pinkerton, and today we are talking about the woeful, awful, horrific NFC West. Previewing that from a fantasy perspective for you. There are a few players that are fantasy worthwhile. There are a few. They're few and far between in that division, but there are a few.
And as bad as the outlook is, they might actually be better than they were last year.
Yes. I mean, one of the things that they're definitely better than we thought at the beginning of the year. You ended up with guys on the Rams like Amendola and Gibson, wide receivers who, especially in PPR leagues, while they didn't get that many yards, they had a ton of receptions. I think Amendola went over 80 and Gibson went over 50. So here and there, you find people like that. Somebody's going to emerge from this division, we hope, to be better than we thought they would be. And you know what? There are a few guys going into the season that, just like last year, that we think are going to be pretty interesting. So let's start with Arizona, where over the years they've had the prolific passing game. Last year with Kurt Warner retiring, and then this year, and Kolb, who is a bit of a wild card.
Yeah, very much a wild card. And he's supposed to be the Kurt Warner reincarnated, the heir apparent. But let's not overvalue Kolb. We don't really know what we're going to get there. Arizona definitely gets an upgrade. I think we can all agree on that. And it's great news for Larry Fitzgerald. His fantasy stock's back on the rise, but you know, we kind of have to pull back the reins a little bit on our expectations for Kevin Kolb.
I mean, one of the things that I've looked at with Kolb, and I'm down on him much more so than a lot of the other people on the Fantasy Source staff even, is that I just don't see what all the hype is about. Going back to his college days from a high-powered offense where he hasn't really settled down and just had an extended period of success, even to the level of someone in this division like Alex Smith, who, when his team did a spread offense for about 6 games, he did very, very well and threw over 60% and had way more touchdowns than interceptions. Kolb has never done that, even on a very good Philadelphia Eagles team last year.
And I think a lot of fantasy owners are expecting, like Matt Schaub moving into a starting position with a new team, new start, and everything. They're expecting similar results for Kolb, and I think that would be full to expect right away.
Now, do you think Fitzgerald is going to live up to his lofty standards?
I wouldn't put him back in the top 5 receivers conversation yet, but I mean his talent is unmatched, really. And you give him just a competent quarterback throwing him balls, he's definitely gonna be back in the top 10.
And then finally, wrapping up the Cardinals, what do you make of Tim Hightower getting shipped out and that running back situation?
The Cardinals are going to let Beanie Wells sink or swim. I don't know which way he's going to go, but you know what? At this point, his stock is so down. He's not going to get overdrafted in fantasy leagues. So if you're picking him up maybe in the 4th or 5th round, that's a nice RB2 upside running back you just picked up.
Moving on to another red-clad team. We just mentioned Alex Smith. The San Francisco 49ers now have Jim Harbaugh running the show. He had, by many accounts from insiders that are now talking about his time at Stanford, a very complex college offense that was pro-level in its complexity and its sophistication. So there isn't much doubt about the transition so much that he'll be lost in the X's and O's. The question, as it has been for several years now in San Francisco, is the talent there?
Well, the question might be, will the players get lost in the X's and O's?
That too. I mean, that's actually a new problem for a college coach going to the pros.
And, well, in the abbreviated offseason, these guys have that much less time to pick up on the new playbook. But there are just questions across the board for me in San Francisco, and I'm going to do everything I can to avoid any sort of overinvestment in a 49ers player, whether it's even Vernon Davis. I know Harbaugh loves his tight ends, but I'm worried about that quarterback situation. I'm worried about the playbook really sinking in with these guys. Frank Gore coming off a hip injury. You know, he's always hurt.
He already has no shoulders and no knees.
Right, and Harbaugh's going to lean on him even more. I just don't see how that's going to work. And Crabtree, foot injury already again. And, of course, you still have some mental and commitment issues with him, and you're not sure what we're going to get.
Well, remember that rookie year he had the foot injury that was a big reason why he actually fell in the draft.
Right. So I'm backing off a lot of 49ers in this draft.
Now, when Alex Smith, his problems are well known. Nobody should be at all. I think it's consensus now that nobody should at all be relying on him in any way, shape, or form. And if you draft him as a backup, you're probably overdrafting him. Do you think that Colin Kaepernick can recoup any of his value as a runner should he play in the second half? Is that something you would even keep an eye on? Because from everything I've been reading, everything I've seen with him, while he was a 4-year player in Nevada, his throwing is going to need a little bit of work at the pro level. I mean, maybe even a lot of work, but he is an elite runner for a quarterback.
And mobile quarterbacks I tend to track, especially if you're talking about maybe just a midseason pickup for a bye week fill-in. That's cheap yards. If he's picking up, maybe 50 to 60 yards, that's cheap points right there, an extra touchdown for you. But I'm not looking for any long-term damage. I certainly wouldn't be drafting him.
Okay. Let's move on to Seattle. The Seahawks, they've got all sorts of problems. I mean, this entire division is just a wasteland of fantasy potential, it seems like. Matt Hasselbeck has moved on, so there's a QB2 that they don't have in the division anymore. What do you see from them? They had a little bit of a mini resurgence among their receiving core last year. I'm not seeing it this year, though.
Yeah, especially with Hasselbeck leaving. Right. It's going to be tough. They brought in Sidney Rice, which is intriguing, but then if you're talking about Tavares Jackson being the one that's hooking up with Sidney Rice.
Yes. Hey, they know each other, right?
Right, and it's important to mention not to overvalue these former connections with offensive coordinators and quarterbacks who barely played. So I think Sidney Rice went there with a long-term goal in mind that Seattle was probably not going to do well this year, get a very good draft pick, and bring in a quarterback that could eventually raise his stock overall. So I'm not looking for much out of anybody in Seattle this year. You got Marshawn Lynch in the backfield. That's not good for anybody.
Well, he did unbox beast mode for at least one play last year.
One play last year, fantasy owners didn't get to partake in it because it was the playoffs, but that's too bad. And unfortunately for Justin Forsett, he's probably stuck behind Lynch for the better part of the year, so we'll see how that goes.
Let's go now to the Rams, the aforementioned Rams who had all those receivers that seemingly came out of nowhere and became fantasy relevant. Sam Bradford, though, I actually looked this up. Sam Bradford, he had, I believe, 3 games, maybe 4, where he threw for more than 235 yards last year. Very high volume passer, lots of completions, high completion percentage for a rookie, almost no yards. Everything was checked down, dump off, which in real life football, probably a great thing for him. Doesn't get hit, nothing like that. But you got to keep in mind, Pat Shurmur, his offensive coordinator, has now moved on to be the Cleveland Browns head coach. It's potentially a change, even if they don't really change their strategy. What do you see from them moving forward?
Well, I really like the way Bradford's rookie season went because he stayed upright, he did not get hurt, and he got confident. And even though the yards weren't really there, now we're introducing him to a Josh McDaniels offense, and the yards could explode.
Talk about a proven offensive coordinator.
Exactly, and I'm not expecting Bradford to vault up into QB1 status for the entire season, but he's definitely a backup that I'm going to want to have on most of my teams because the potential's there. The upside is certainly there.
So preferred backup status, would you say? Would you say even top 15 quarterback?
He's pushing top 15, maybe by the end of the season. I don't know if right now if we rank the top 15 safe picks, so to speak. I don't know if he would fit in there, but he definitely has that potential.
What about the wide receivers? Danny Amendola is the big name. Had some 80-something receptions last year. Do you think, looking back at Josh McDaniels' last bit of coaching, of course the Patriots were amazing. They had incredible talent. But then even with the Denver Broncos and Kyle Orton running the show, they had a pretty good offense going there.
Well, here's the beauty of when you're talking about a division full of so many mediocre teams with so many glaring holes, is that they have to find a way to fill these holes. And you look at the Rams, they obviously have filled the quarterback position, so there's some stability there. Now what they need is a number one receiver to step up. They have signed Mike Sims-Walker, and he becomes a deep sleeper now. He had some up and down success there in Jacksonville, but injuries were always a problem. If he's healthy and he's the number one guy, I'm very intrigued by his potential. And also with Josh McDaniels in town, you know that there's going to be a slot machine. And that's where your boy Danny Amendola steps up, and I think he could be an asset in PPR leagues.
What about Steven Jackson? Does any of this stuff change his outlook? Is he in your mind still a first-round running back?
Well, in my mind, he was never really a first-round running back because of the injuries. Not because of the talent, certainly, but because of the injuries in offense. And he's still, obviously, the injuries are still a concern. The offense is getting better, but now you're just tacking another year on to his legs. I think he's a second-round back, and he's borderline RB1, but there's more optimism around Steven Jackson this year than I've ever had before.
So basically, your advice is if you're in that spot where maybe the better wide receivers, the better quarterbacks are there, and you're taking those guys, and then you're coming back around, and you need a first running back, and he's still there, he's probably going to be your best option.
Yeah. If you did something unorthodox, maybe with your first round pick, having the upside of Jackson, the talent, and the the experience of Jackson is a good way to go filling your running back slots.
All right, Brad, that is the NFC West. Thank you for joining us.
Enjoy it.